Thank you for joining us, and welcome to our webinar, Optimize Your Network Infrastructure to Guarantee Your Business Applications Performance and Succeed with New IT Transformations, hosted by Aberdeen Group and sponsored by Ipanema Technologies. My name is Joe Venezia, and I will be your moderator. Presenting to you first on this topic today is Jim Raposa, Senior Research Analyst of the Network Application Performance Research Practice of Aberdeen Group. He is focused on the increasing performance pressures that organizations are confronted within their network and application infrastructures. And we will also hear from David White, President of North America at Ipanema Technologies, and has been working in networking more than 20 years in Silicon Valley technology. I encourage all of you to submit any desired questions using the Q&A field at the top left, as well as to visit the resources section at the bottom left, where you'll see a copy of this slide set, as well as some other related PDF assets for you to download if you desire. And it is now my pleasure to turn the webinar over to Jim Raposa. Jim, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Joe. Hi, welcome to this webinar. What we're going to be learning today, what we're going to be talking about, the key word to remember is transformations. You're going to hear that quite a bit because we're not just talking about IT transformations, we're talking about technology transformations. We're talking about how business and technology is changing everything that we do, and specifically new technologies. So we're going to talk about the state of some of the new technologies, the emerging technologies, and how they're affecting business today. We're going to look at how these technologies are creating new challenges and creating new complexities for how organizations and businesses manage and optimize their networks and their application infrastructure and make sure that they are delivering the best performance for their core applications. We're looking at how these new technology transformations and the transformations in how IT is done is increasing complexity. It's getting rid of some of the old safe ways we were able to do things. And we're going to look at how best-in-class organizations are meeting these challenges and the benefits they are getting from their strategies that make them best in class. And just a quick note here, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Aberdeen Group, but what we mean by best in class, because I know that's a sort of a general term that can be used differently in different organizations, different industries, is by looking at the metrics of success of network and application performance, we identify the top 20% of businesses, and we define them as the best in class. If you're in the middle, you're industry average, and if you're in the bottom 30%, you're considered a laggard. So we're going to talk about the benefits that the best-in-class gain, and at the end we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to offer some recommendations based on what we've learned from the best-in-class. What we've seen are their strategies and the actions that they take to become best-in-class and to get the most out of their IT infrastructure and provide a high-level application platform and delivery and optimized platform and meet the challenges of these new technologies and IT transformations. Quick word about who the Aberdeen Group is. For those of you who haven't heard of us or worked with us before, we are a research and analyst firm. One of the main differences is that we've solely focused on end users, on your peers, on businesses and organizations like your own. We talk to them, we survey them, and look at what they're doing with technology. How are they deploying? How are they being affected? What are the challenges? What are the pressures? What are the strategies that they're taking in dealing with, in my case, network and application and other core IT infrastructure problems? Like I said, we define the best-in-class or leaders based on business metrics, uptime, reliability, end-user satisfaction, a whole set of different metrics to get to that 20% best-in-class. And by looking at them and by talking to these businesses, we're able to see the characteristics and capabilities that make these people leaders and not followers, and we're able to recommend actions based on that data and research. So with that bookkeeping stuff over, let's get into the meat, the core part of the technology presentation here today. So for us, for those of us, and I'm assuming almost everybody on this webinar works in IT or works in technology in some way, new technologies are the best thing, and it's what makes our job great. Could you imagine working in one of those fields that the job you do today is not really any different from the job somebody else did in your place 30 years ago, where nothing really changes? Maybe your phones are different or something, but basically the job you do is exactly the same. I mean, I don't think I could survive that. The great thing about being in tech is that our jobs are constantly different. Like Dave said, he's been in this for 20 years. I started at PC Week doing product reviews back in 1993, and I was doing some stuff before that too. So, I've seen the move from mainframes to PCs to laptops to the internet to the cloud to mobile devices. It's in just a very short time, the way we do business, the way we manage technology has radically changed, and that's what makes our jobs great. It makes it exciting and different. But there is it is a two-edged sword. There's a negative to the positive. There's the yin to the yang. These new technologies, they disrupt, they transform how we do IT, how we do our jobs, how our businesses work. They add a complexity, and they get rid of the old. Everybody likes tried and true. They like if it's not broke, don't fix it. But that doesn't often apply in technology. A new technology comes along, and no matter what you do, it is breaking the old way. It's transforming it. In a world of cloud and mobile and big data and software-defined data centers and networks, trying to stick to what worked 5 years ago is pretty much a guaranteed 100% recipe for failure. So, the new technologies are here, and we have to be ready for them. So let's move on. In this slide, I want you to think of this as actually two slides, because there are two slides, because there's so much data here I want to show. What I did is in a survey, I asked businesses, I asked organizations, what were the top emerging technologies that they were deploying today? And also, what were the technologies they planned to deploy in the next 12 months? So what you see, and one point I want to make, some of you might look at this and you might see these first, some of these first lists, server virtualization, VoIP, and UC, and you might think to yourself, well, those aren't that new. I mean, I've been doing server virtualization for many years now. We've had some kind of VoIP infrastructure for many years now. But the interesting thing, and I'm going to go back to that word again, transformations, transformative. Every new technology transforms the ones before it. So yes, you may have been doing virtualization 6, 7 years ago, but the way you do server virtualization today is radically different because of changes like the cloud, because of the rise of the private cloud, because of SDN now. SDN is software-defined networks are changing how server virtualization works. Same thing with VoIP and UC. Mobile is changing how you do UC. Changes in the overall network infrastructure are changing how you do VoIP and UC. So the interesting thing with new technologies is that they affect every tech or a large number of other technologies that came before them and make them new again. So it's sort of like a constant rebirth in technologies. So that's why you might see some stuff here. I consider these emerging technologies because they are totally different than what they were before. So just kind of going quickly through some of these numbers here. And the way you're going to see, if these two slides were one giant wide slide, you'd see sort of a U-curve, because we're going to see to the left, you're going to see the technologies that are widely deployed in businesses, and on the right, or the end of the next slide, you're going to see the technologies that aren't as widely deployed now, but that businesses plan to deploy in the next year. And you're also going to see, when we get to the slide about what are the top challenges, you're going to see an interesting correlation with these deployed emerging technologies as well. So, right at the top three there, you have, server virtualization, very high number of deployments, up around 80%. Almost every business today is doing some form of server virtualization. Right following it very closely, you have VoIP and UC. You walk through a business today, you're very unlikely to see, POTS lines, good old, traditional phone systems. You're going to see phones with Ethernet plugs jacked into them. You're going to see a large number of IP telephony, and we're going to get a little more deeply into how VoIP and UC are changing business. I'm going to dive deeper into some of these technologies, but I'm just going to kind of go through this list. We see transformed the way storage systems work because of virtualization, because of the cloud, because of some other new technologies. 10G, a fairly high number there at 50%. I'm kind of surprised, or at least some of the networking guys I've talked to have been a little surprised by a fairly high number of deployments with 10G. But yeah, to a large degree, if you've been buying new equipment, most of your options are going to be 10G, and why not? I think it's a smart move for businesses, and something we're going to talk about later about when you're dealing with these transformations. You want to be ready for the new technology. You want to have room for growth. Just kind of going through here, enterprise video content and communications, this can be to a certain degree locked in with UC depending on how you use it, but obviously we see a fairly high number of businesses embracing video as a core content, just as documents or any other core data and content in their business. Video has been embraced both as a real-time communications medium and as a data storage, whether it's for a content type, whether it's for training or marketing or for a whole host of other ways that video can be used within a business. We also see 43% for desktop virtualization. Again, a number I think some people might be surprised is relatively high. But there are certain segments of the industry that have wholly embraced desktop virtualization or some form of application virtualization where they can ease how they're deploying applications and systems across their organization, have a much greater level of control. But of course, as we'll talk about too, that brings its own network and application reliability challenges. So moving on to this next set of emerging technologies, this next set of slides. This is where we're going to start to see the trend change from deployed to plan to deploy. Mobile device management, I don't really like that term. I think MDM has become to mean something more like big fat clients that you stick on people's phones so you can have total control, know what they're doing. You can remotely wipe them and things like that. Obviously, with the rise of BYOD, so that is something we're going to talk about a little more in depth. But the bring your own device trend, which businesses love because they don't have to buy people phones. People can just bring their own smartphones, their own tablets into the office, and businesses hate because they don't have any control, they don't have security, they don't have any visibility into those customer devices. So you are seeing some form of trying to bring these mobile devices. Again, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but I think you're seeing a switch to approaching it from the network, to approaching it from the access side. Instead of trying to put fat clients on people's devices, you see a move to kind of say, okay, we're going to see how you connect to the network, and we're going to get some level of control and access and security by that methodology. Next, public cloud, 42%, which is I think that correlates well with what we're seeing. And when you add in the plan, you're going to see a fairly high number of businesses deploying public cloud. And again, I'm going to get a little more in depth in this, but this can mean not just traditional cloud services like Amazon and like Rackspace, where you stick virtualized servers up in the cloud and have them run and managed that way. It can also mean things like software as a service, platform as a service, all those other different AA as a services, which are basically allowing you to put core business systems or non-core business systems out in the cloud, remove them from your own data center, and get the benefits and capabilities from having them run in the cloud. But also there are challenges, especially from a network visibility and performance understanding, that come from dealing with the cloud. Okay, now we're getting into some of the technologies that are the plan to implement is higher than the currently implemented private and hybrid cloud, which means taking those kind of cloud systems, those cloud technologies that we've learned from using Amazon, from using these other cloud services, and applying them to your company's internal data center. So, and again, I'm going to get a little more, but obviously there are problems that come with server virtualization. There are challenges, there are complexities, and part of what private cloud is offering is ability to ease management, ease deployment in the same way that you do in cloud-based, public cloud-based services for those virtualized systems that you're running inside your company network. Big data, another big hype standpoint, but obviously big data has a lot of appeal. It allows businesses to suck in a lot of different information and gain competitive knowledge and business information and edges in their productivity. But obviously it has a lot of complexity. It's probably one of the more complex things on this list. It can impact your performance, sucking in all that data from all these different areas of your business. And it adds complexity because just because it's that whole drinking from the fire hose standpoint, you've got to have the tools and systems in place to actually understand all of that data. The next point, this is the number that was, this survey was in June. I actually think the number would be a little bit higher if I was running the survey right now. But 20% companies have already done some form of SDN. It might be research, it might be a trial, but still some form of SDN deployment. 22% plan to do it in a year, so you're talking over 40% penetration of SDN within a year. And this has really taken off. I mean, I was writing about SDN for a few years in my prior roles in the technology press, but SDN has really taken off in the last year, and this is possibly probably going to be the most disruptive, most transformative of some of the technologies that we're talking about. It's going to change how you think of networks, how you think of applications. We're just really scratching the surface of this right now, but this is a technology that really it transforms all of the other ones on the list, and it will have a huge impact part of the interesting thing and the complexity here is that I don't think even the experts, even people who are doing behind SDN can predict exactly how it's going to change things. And the final one on the list here is IPv6, which is kind of interesting because I probably could have put this on my list back in 1997, which I think was the first time I wrote about IPv6. It's been just around the corner for a really long time now, and it's kind of almost like a punchline. But you see 18%, which is a pretty low number, have already done their switch over to IPv6. 47% plan to do so in the next year. I've been seeing that plan to do so in the next year for a couple of years now, but you know, it is going to happen, whether it's this year or next year or sometime in the next couple of years. It just, we're running out of IPv4 addresses. There's only so many things you can do to kind of kick the can down the road. And IPv6 is going to have a huge impact on your network, just not only from upgrading your systems and hardware in different areas to work with IPv6, but from the changes it brings to the underlying network and IP layer, from a security, from a performance, from a monitoring, and from a management standpoint. So that will have a huge impact and some changes in complexity. And Dave, you and I were talking a little bit earlier. I'm talking to Dave White here from Ipanema, and we were talking a bit about some of the transformative technologies you're seeing from your customers. I wonder if you want to just kind of kick in a couple comments on what you've seen talking to your customers.
Yeah, happy to, Jim. And you made a comment earlier about transformations based on 5 years ago. I think that we're really talking a period of 2 to 3 years that a lot of these things have happened. You've got 12 items on your list, and all of those are transformations that cause stress on the network and cause enterprises to change their network infrastructure and to change the way they look at applications and performance. Unified communications is a good example, although it seems like there's a lot of customers that have implemented UC. In fact, most. What we find is they kind of put their toes in the water. They're using a lot of voice probably for unified communications, but when you get into collaboration and use of video, it's very difficult because there are problems associated with it. These applications are very bandwidth hungry. They don't accelerate well because they're real-time applications, and they also have a lot of protocols embedded in them. So there has to be ways to manage them that are different in order not to have a huge impact on the network.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I could probably talk for an hour, but if I do, you won't have any time left.
Yeah, and we're actually going. There's some good data there on UC, and I have a slide coming up that dives a little deeper into UC. So I might get back to you on that because I have a couple of comments and questions there, but I'm going to save them until we get to that slide.
Okay, great.
So now we've talked about these new technologies, these transformative technologies, and like I said, if you go back a couple slides ago where I listed the ones that were most deployed in businesses, and now you look at this slide where we're talking about what were the technology challenges that businesses face today? What were the things that are impacting their network, impacting their applications, impacting performance? And you see kind of an interesting correlation with this list in that it pretty much matches up pretty well with that previous list about the top deployed technologies. So we look here, we have the top challenges. We have an increasingly virtualized infrastructure. So all these businesses are doing virtualization, but they're having challenges with it. It's causing issues as far as like visibility. For a lot of old school network monitoring, network and analytics tools, they don't see virtualized systems in the same way they see a traditional hardware server. It's almost a black hole to them. So that's causing a challenge. It's creating a complexity, and also there are challenges around management, which I will get into a little bit in a slide further down. Dave just talked about the impact of UC and VoIP and video. This is adding real-time bandwidth traffic that's not tolerant of lag, not tolerant of jitter. If you're on a video call with someone, if you're doing a voice call, it has to be real-time. It has to be high performance. And it can't be being brought down because a bunch of people on the network decided to jump up and watch a funny video on YouTube or to check out a sporting event or something. This is a core, and what we'll show is a core business app now, and it has a huge impact on network performance, not just its own, but on other applications. You're seeing rising user demand for services. This comes partially from a trend I like to call better at home. if it used to be that work was where you went to get good technology, the stuff you had at home just wasn't as good as the technology you had in the office. And that's flipped around now. Basically, users at home have, they have fiber, they have broadband, they probably have a faster network at home than they do in the office. They have, they have their own personal devices. They buy a better laptop, a better smartphone probably than the business would have if they had provided them. Often they use better social networking, better video tools. They're used to using Facebook and LinkedIn and these other tools that really work better than the ones that they see the corresponding collaboration tools that they use in the business. You have these increasingly high-demand users who not just want these different services and different capabilities, but expect them to run really well, expect them to run in the same way that they get out of their personal applications. We talked a little bit about big data. This is just more data coming down the pipe that needs to be understood, that needs to be broken down so it can be analyzed so a business can gain competitive benefits. And if you're sucking down that fire hose, you have to have a big enough hose to take it all in. There's two here I'm going to combine. We have the increasing importance of mobile access, and two below that, the employees using mobile devices or BYOD. Both of those are obviously huge challenges, not just from a performance standpoint, but from a visibility standpoint. More of your core applications are being delivered mobily, and they're being delivered to devices you don't control over networks, often carrier networks that you don't see. So from a challenge, from a complexity standpoint, this whole new mobile trend is completely transforming and breaking a lot of the old models, that were built around understanding what was happening to somebody either using a traditional desktop app or accessing something on a traditional PC through a traditional browser. So this is just completely altering, old methods don't work in a mobile and BYOD world. You need to adapt new trends and strategies to meet the challenges that comes with. And also, obviously this one could probably be on increasing costs for data center and your network operations center. This is a challenge that just constantly exists, and part of dealing with these transformations is not just to not be affected by the complexity and change, but to gain the benefits of the new technologies, which often result in cost savings and efficiencies and higher reliability.
Yeah, I certainly agree with your comments, Jim, because I know my home network works quite nicely, and it's fairly simple, and I have a lot of bandwidth, but that all changes when you get into a corporate environment. And, the last comment you made is very important. When you take a look at these transformations, most enterprises are trying to implement several of them at the same time, or they've got them phased. And that creates a lot of complexity on the network. And in order to deliver the benefits, the cost savings, and the ROI, you need to make sure that they're working right. Which really means that you need to manage your applications, and you need to make sure that your critical business apps are still performing the way they should, while at the same time you're getting the benefit of all the new transformations. It's not an easy job, and I'm sure there's a lot of IT professionals every night who wonder how they're going to manage it in the morning when they go to the office.
Yeah, it's a great point. And you talk about, obviously, we don't really get into but a lot of these systems, especially when you talk about social, some of the mobile applications, are kind of rogue deployments. It's some department or some, high-level user says, oh, I'm going to use this, I think it'll help my business, and IT kit doesn't even have an idea that it's being run. So that just, again, it adds to the complexity. You need to know what's happening on your network too. It's not like the old days where everything constantly had to be, officially provisioned. SaaS applications can be deployed with just a credit card. So yeah, the headaches and complexities for businesses are definitely there from these new technologies. In this slide, obviously related, we're talking about increasing pressures. These are more the strategic pressures. The last slide was sort of the technology challenges. These are the sort of strategic pressures we see. You see applications are too complex. And that's what, when you have applications that are, cloud-based and mobile-based and, tying into different data sources, you have new, and not just from the applications that your consumers, that your end users are deploying, the own tool sets you're using to try and manage and understand these systems, they're not built for this modern, these modern transformations. They require you to have multiple screens. They don't, have a sort of end-to-end, unified view of what's happening on your network, what's happening with your applications, and that just increases the complexity as a business trying to gain control of these problems. The next one here at 42%, you see poor understanding of end-user experience. This is huge, and this again relates to the move to mobile. It used to be, if you had an understanding of end-user experience, you were basically looking at what they were doing over the browser, using your applications and stuff like that. When an increasing number of your content, your applications is being accessed over mobile, possibly over carrier, you're not really sure what's happening with the end-user experience. You don't know if the Android users are getting a different experience than the iPhone users. As a business, if you don't understand how your end users and customers are experiencing your applications, you don't really have a good chance to build a reliable and high-performing application because you don't even know what's going on. Can't justify the cost platform. Again, that's sort of an evergreen, but you can't deny that that's a problem. And it's a problem both from an old school standpoint and a modern standpoint. Your old school systems that used to be good enough are actually costing you money now because they're inefficient, they're unreliable, and they can't handle these modern transformations, these modern technology challenges, and they're probably increasing in downtime, increasing in help desk support and other issues that are increasing your costs in that way. Application platform doesn't support business growth. I mean, this is a huge issue when dealing with new technologies. We've seen again and again, and I'll talk about this further on, in the presentation, that the businesses that are built to grow, that are built to meet business growth, are those that plan for it, that understand that, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I need to be ready for that change so I can adapt, so I don't have to be sort of, oh my God, I have to rip and replace everything to meet these new challenges. And the last of these increasing pressures, one thing I do want to point out with all these slides, none of these lists are like, please choose one of 5 or 1 or 6. These are all usually questions that had like 20, 30 answers. So these are top 5 type of pressures, so just so that's clear. But this top 5 pressure here is lack tools to resolve problems. And that goes to using the tools built to meet yesterday's problems. Like I said, those tool sets don't understand virtualization, they don't understand mobile, they don't see the cloud, they can't piece together all these different things. They're not built for that world. And if you don't have tools that have been built to meet these modern transformations, then you don't really have much of a chance to manage and understand what's happening on your network and happening with your applications today. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dive a little tiny bit deeper into some of the technologies we mentioned, just because just going to go over some of the specific challenges you meet from some of these. So we talked about server virtualization and the private cloud. And like I said, server virtualization is pretty highly deployed across businesses. We see probably an average of 55% of applications are being deployed on virtual servers. And this is happening across business types. We see here, whether it's small, mid-sized, large, the numbers are very similar. Like I said, it's an average around 55 that, businesses that have deployed, the average of 55% of applications are being deployed on virtualized servers. And you're going to see different, if we did a whole thing on cloud, you'd see that the things that are generally considered business critical are probably less likely to be deployed in a virtual or cloud environment, whereas a lot of the business things that are important business apps but not critical are more likely to end up on virtual or cloud servers. And we also see that when all projects are done, this data on the left, 70% of all applications will be on virtual servers. So there's a lot of benefits on virtualization, but there's a lot of problems that come. There's things like VM sprawl. Businesses don't even know how many how many virtual servers they have in their company. They haven't put in place the tools to control how users create VMs. They're not really sure of the impact they're having on their network and on their data center and on their application infrastructure. So what we're seeing, is this adoption. Like I said, private cloud and some of these other new networking technologies are transforming how you do server virtualization to make it possible to control how people create VMs, to have a better understanding of provisioning and managing these, and having the capabilities to optimize them. That's how you can handle virtualization and beat the challenge and get the most out of your virtualization private cloud. The next slide is on, like we said, Dave talked about UC earlier. There's an interesting thing, when you talk about, sometimes he's totally right. If you ask businesses, are you doing UC, you're not going to get as many saying yes, or you're going to get ones who said, like, they dipped their toes and they weren't ready for it. And UC, I think, is the prime example of a technology that if a business isn't ready, when it didn't do the prep work to put in a UC, it's going to fail. You have to configure your network and your infrastructure, and your whole platform has to be ready for UC to do a successful rollout. If you just think you can drop a unified platform into your existing network without changing anything, you don't even bother, because it is going to fail. But what I find is that if you talk to a lot of businesses, they'll say, oh, no, we don't do UC, and then you ask them the capabilities that they have, and they go, well, we have VoIP, and we do real-time video, and we have a collaboration system that's integrated with our email, and it's like, so they may not have invested in an overarching classic UC platform, but when you break down the capabilities, they are doing UC, and it is important to these businesses. As we see here, 30% of the organizations we survey consider UC and VoIP over IP to be a business-critical application. So it has to perform well. You have to build a network that is designed. You have to build an infrastructure that is designed to provide, to meet the challenges of these high bandwidth and low tolerance for latency applications and services. And Dave, I just kind of want to kick back to you a little bit, because you had spoken very specifically about UC, so I'm kind of interested in some of the things you've seen for your customers in this area.
No, thanks, Jim. UC is absolutely a business-critical app. We agree with that. That's what our customers say. I think some of the issues with UC, and we talked about putting your toe in the water, relates to a couple of slides ago where you were talking about all the pressures on IT. Our customers look at UC as critical. They want to implement a video maybe across the entire enterprise. They certainly want to integrate video into a lot of their usage, and they want to make sure that they're capable of doing it effectively, and it is critical. But at the same time, they're looking at their network, and they now have possibly part of their network being hosted. They're running SaaS apps. They've got some cloud implementations. They, of course, still have their core MPLS. And then on top of that, they're now putting some unified communications in and want to add a lot of video to it. It makes the network very, very complex. Certainly increases pressure on budgets for bandwidth, but the real issue is about managing in a dynamic way the applications, because you need to be dynamic when you manage unified communications. Pinning things up statically and getting static reports doesn't solve the problem. So they need to find ways to dynamically make sure that the applications are being managed effectively, and that's the big challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And when you talk about, when we were talking about technologies that transform other technologies, one that's definitely transforming UC is mobility. A lot of the UC systems and VoIP systems that we saw even just a couple, 2-3 years ago. I mean, I remember doing case studies on UC deployments. And if they talked about mobile devices, it was mainly just to sort of like, oh, yeah, and it can, the UC system will call out to your mobile. It'll know that you're on your mobile as opposed to being in the office type of thing, which was a nice feature. But, in the modern world now, the mobile is the core. It is the main app. It is the main computing platform. I mean, we knew that was coming. We all knew within a certain amount of time that mobile devices become the primary way that businesses and business users consume data, consume applications, and connect to their work and their partners and their customers. But I think it happened a lot faster than everybody expected, because we are there. In this survey, we found 91% of users said that they are using a smartphone or tablet in the workplace. It was one of the number one pressures for businesses is this increased demand for mobile application access. People are on their smartphones, they're on their tablets. I know myself, I've been at conferences lately, several conferences traveling. I don't bring my laptop. I just use my mobile devices. I use my tablet, I use my phone, and that's it. From a business standpoint, there are benefits that come from this, because, like we said, you're not buying, 1,000 BlackBerries anymore. But, you also don't have a lot of visibility. You don't have a lot of control. Mobile devices are, they are a computing platform, but they are different from the ones we've been using. And the challenge here is especially, I find, obviously there are bandwidth platforms, issues. If people are getting onto your corporate network with their tablet and watching Netflix or something, that's an issue. So you have to have, that layer of control. You have to have that layer of understanding that when people access, that they're under the corporate policies, that there are only certain things they can do, just as if they were using a company machine. but also there's the whole visibility standpoint. If I'm out on a carrier network, there's only so much you can see from a performance standpoint. So you really have to have that ability to kind of optimize and understand and piece together application performance across all these different connectivity points. And an interesting thing is that we are seeing a change from trying to address BYOD and mobile challenges from let's stick a client on people's devices, which totally understandably your employees resisted because that's their phone. They paid a lot of money for it. They don't want a corporate app on there, especially one that can be remotely wipe their phone. And you're seeing it move to more of a network issue. You're seeing the people on the network side saying, okay, we're going to control how this is accessed, how applications are used, and we don't have to put anything on the mobile device. And I'm kind of interested, just a quick comment, Dave. I know we were talking about some of the things you're seeing on BYOD. I just want to kick back again to you. We're going to try and keep, as you can tell, we're keeping this kind of interactive between me and Dave, so I was kind of interested in what you've seen there.
No, I appreciate it. That's probably because I've been poking you. It's true. It's a growing issue. According to Gartner, and I'll quote them in a way, but they feel that the number of users of BYOD will double within the next 2 years, and also by 2017, half of the employers are going to require employees to bring their own device. It won't be where the employees want to; they'll have to. And you made a comment about applications, and that's true because it's not just BYOD. With BYOD comes BYOA, or bring your own application.
Yep.
And it becomes even more difficult then. And once these devices are in the corporate network, and we see it today with most of our customers, they have to manage bandwidth, and they have to also manage the applications. And no, we don't want Netflix and some of the YouTube apps we don't want, but you have to manage that now in the corporate network. But there are a lot of applications, I know there are on my phone, that are important to me for business. So the real critical need is to, yes, allow BYOD, allow BYOA, but then make sure you found a way to manage the performance and manage the performance of those applications along with your other critical business apps. And that's the big challenge. Of course, obviously, we feel we have a solution, but I'll talk about that later.
Okay, good. I'll try to move along, too, so we can get to some of that as well. Just one more technology I wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive in is the public cloud. As we saw, cloud, it has a fairly high adoption level. Public cloud a little lower than, obviously, some of the other technologies, but still, a pretty high number of businesses have adopted the public cloud, whether that's in a SaaS model or in a sort of like, the Amazon Rackspace model. And obviously one of the problems here is that it is outside of your corporate infrastructure. It's outside of the network, outside of the WAN. Being able to sort of optimize, monitor, see these applications, these servers, these services that aren't on your network, they only touch your network when somebody's accessing it. That obviously brings a management, a performance, a monitoring issue there. And, as we said too, SaaS can be something that one of your employees can deploy simply by using their credit card and signing up. So from a management, from a visibility standpoint, cloud, especially from a monitoring standpoint, you need to be able to see what's going on, and these are tying into your other corporate applications. If you're using, let's say, a CRM system that's cloud-based, a SaaS-based, in a lot of ways it's also interacting with some of your internal core business applications. So there's a lot of issues in making sure you can't just say, well, it's in the cloud, I don't really care about the performance of it. It's like you have to care just as much about the performance, about what's happening in your cloud applications as you do of those that are running inside your network. And we do see this. We look at some of the pressures when we've asked cloud-focused businesses about performance. They have that need to meet service-level agreements. There are rising user demand for applications. This is we need the SaaS app, and you need to deploy it in a way that doesn't negatively impact your network. And they want these, to be delivered and work on mobile devices and applications. So again, cloud is transforming the way that you monitor and manage your applications and deploy them, and that's adding complexity from a management and optimization standpoint. I don't know, Dave, did you have a quick comment here, or?
Just a real quick comment is that SaaS applications are really just a part of the corporate network, even if they're managed separately, because our customers look at their networks as a single network. but many of our customers have moved to hybrid networks, and when you move to a hybrid network and you're trying to manage SaaS applications going over the internet, at the same time you're managing your MPLS network, you need to find a way to do that effectively, and that does create even more challenges and complexity.
Yeah, definitely. So here's a few extra emerging technologies. I'm not going to do a deep dive on them, but they all have an impact. Like I said, big data is just, it's increasing. That adds complexity and adds more data coming in over your network pipes, and that has to be done in an efficient and bandwidth responsible way so you can get the most out of that data, get that business competitive information without bringing your network down to its knees. Social networking, which implies everything from using Facebook and LinkedIn to traditional collaboration tools to YouTube and some of these video collaboration things. They've become the way you communicate with your customers, with your business, with your partners. But they can both negatively and positively impact your business and your performance. And you can't be blocking Facebook or LinkedIn because obviously that's, like I said, it's a major communication channel for a lot of your workers. But you need to implement those within your network in a responsible and bandwidth controlled way. With the virtual desktops, you're kicking entire OSs out of your network. You can't have issues like lagging mice or typing, and then a couple minutes later, a few seconds later, you see the letters show up. There's a lot of bandwidth issues, a lot of optimization issues, a lot of network stress issues that come from poorly implemented virtual desktops. And when you see it done effectively, they work pretty seamlessly within a network from businesses that thought it out. That's another one. You have to really plan for it before you do it. I'm not even going to get to IPv6 too much other than that. Yes, when it does happen, it will greatly change your network. SDN, it's still nascent, but it potentially, like I said, it has the potential to be the most transformative of all the technologies we're talking about. Because this will, I fully believe within 2 or 3 years, some programmer somewhere, whether they're like Google or just some kid in his or her basement, is going to figure out a way to do something with SDN that none of us are predicting, something way beyond virtual LANs and controller planes. They're going to make the network an application, and that will really transform the way we're talking about these things. Kind of quickly, I just want to go over some of, like we said, the best-in-class strategies. These are the businesses that are at that top 20% that, based on my data, have the highest levels of application performance, network performance, highest user satisfaction, least amount of errors and problems. And the things that they're doing, I want to tie these top two together: increase network capacity and design a new networking strategy. These are tied together because we're not talking about the old school throw more hardware at it type of solution. Obviously, there is an element of buying new things, but when we're talking about increasing network capacity, it is in the context of a new networking strategy. It's about taking advantage of these new technologies, of new strategies, of new ways of building your network, of building your internet connectivity, of creating a WAN. Essentially, it's totally changed from the way it used to be. The smart businesses we found are the ones that aren't afraid to adopt these new strategies, to kind of think differently about their network and increase capacity, not just from a buying bigger and more hardware, but also from if we do X, we will get more efficiency, we will get more reliability, and we will have more growth potential for our network. So it's getting away from the tried and true and adopting what will become the tried and true method for the next few years. Automate their performance monitoring. I mean, this goes to me to a lot to real-time understanding. The sooner you know what's going on your network, the sooner you can take action. If there's a problem, if there's an issue, the businesses that have the best performance understanding are the ones that basically are able to avoid problems in real time. The old school methods of kind of log-based understanding of, I know what happened to my network yesterday or even just a few hours ago, are going to cause huge problems for you. Also, we see that, adapting the mobile strategy, adapting cloud strategies, those are our core issues for, building out that understanding. Like we said, mobile is where users are going to be consuming your content, and cloud is where a lot of your content and applications are going to be. And you need to have a strategy to effectively implement those into your overall IT infrastructure so you have the same level of control, same level of visibility, same level of management that you did out of traditional applications. So those are some of the strategies that the best-in-class is taking. Now, is it just a strategic move to be best-in-class? Now, there are actually benefits from being a best-in-class. Like I said, they are the companies we've identified at the top 20% of performance. And here's we see what the benefits are they're gaining. Twice as many of the best-in-class who are identifying here as application performance leaders we're able to get that 4 nines availability of their critical business applications, meaning they are just up. They aren't crashing. They aren't going down. They're providing high user satisfaction all the time for the users. So they're able to have reliable applications. Also along with that, almost 3 times of these leaders of best in class are able to, for the most part, avoid errors in their applications and their transactions. They had a very high level of error-free transactions, meaning that their applications are running well. There aren't bugs, there aren't problems. End users are getting the apps and they're experiencing the way they expect to. And again, fairly significant benefit of edge here for the leaders in having high transaction completion rates. Obviously, when you're getting out over the internet, anything can happen, but these businesses have built infrastructures and strategies that ensure that they're things are completing, that their applications are running well overall. So the best in class, like we said, and there are a bunch of other metrics I could have pulled out if I wanted to do like 5 or 6 slides about how these businesses have high user satisfaction, have high uptime, and just overall have a good application and network infrastructure that allows them to succeed in these transforming IT markets. So real quick, I just want to go over some of the recommendations. Obviously, you all have these slide decks, so you can go back and read these. But these are the recommendations we've gleaned from talking to these and surveying these best-in-class businesses about how they succeed. First, it is to understand your current network, your current application infrastructure. I mean, if you don't really know what you're doing now, I don't see how you can really make it any better to improve. So we've seen that the best-in-class, these guys know what's going on with their current network. They know where it's working and they know where it isn't working, which is always the key to making things better. Like I said, they aren't afraid to think differently, which I hate to use that term because it's kind of tied to a famous networking, famous advertising campaign, but I'm going to say it anyways. These guys, they know that there are new strategies that didn't exist, and that they're investigating them, they're looking into them, and they're taking advantage of these strategies to boost their capabilities, boost their bandwidth, and get increased cost savings out of their application and IT infrastructure. Do the legwork, do the prep work, and you've got to be, you can't just, I can't throw a new technology at you and you're going to, you're not Trinity in the Matrix. You can't say, oh wait, now I know how to fly this helicopter. You have to do the legwork. You have to, do the investigation. You have to understand these technologies. Like we said, if you just drop that into a network, you're going to fail. You've got to do the legwork. You've got to do the prep work to make sure that your IT infrastructure is ready for the technologies, and then you will have a successful deployment. Like we said earlier, build for growth. The best in class have built network and application infrastructures that are ready to grow, that are ready to adapt to these new technologies, that don't have to be ripped and replaced to meet new challenges. We got 2 pages of recommendations here, just so you know. 2 for 1. Like I said, track these emerging technologies. The businesses, the people who are understanding these things as they're coming down the road are going to be ready for them. They're going to know which ones they need to deploy, which ones they don't need to deploy, and also they're going to know what their partners are doing. So even if you're not adapting a new technology, possibly some of your partners and customers are. So by understanding these new technologies, you're going to be able to gain the benefits of them more effectively. You're going to be ready for these new technologies as they come down the pipeline. And part of that is talking to your key suppliers and vendors. They're doing a lot of this legwork themselves. They're adapting these technologies. They're putting SDN and IPv6 and cloud capabilities and mobile capabilities into their product lines. They're dealing with these same challenges and pressures. So talking to them will help you understand, will help with any implementation that you're planning to do. And the main point is don't get left behind. These transformations, these new technologies, they are coming. You can't avoid them. There's very few businesses that can kind of, stick their head in the sand and say, that's okay, everything's working for me, I'm just going to keep going this way. These are coming, and the top performing businesses, know that they're, not only are they coming and they're, they don't look at them from fear. They look at them from what's the edge we're going to get. How are we going to boost our productivity? How are we going to get increased capabilities? And how are we going to get a competitive edge? And that's key. Across the board, we've seen that the best in class have a 18% edge in adapting new technologies when compared to their competitors. So you don't want to be left behind. You want to be ready for these new technologies. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Dave. You can use some of your time here to tell us a little bit about Ipanema and maybe talk about some of the recommendations you have.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim. That's been great. We will talk a little bit about Ipanema very shortly, tell you how we see some of the complexity, and also give you a good snapshot of a tremendous solution that will help manage the complexity. First of all, Ipanema as a company, we're focused on guaranteeing application performance. That's what we do. We make sure that the applications on your network are always getting the performance they need on a per-user basis so that your critical apps are always running. And next thing is that who are we? Well, Ipanema happens to be a French company, and I happen to be in Paris right now, even though I live in Orange County. So that's who we are, and North American headquarters is in Waltham, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. Gartner likes us, which is good. We're a leading visionary and almost in the leaders quadrant for WAN optimization and WAN path controllers, which is being looked at more as a hybrid network. We do have 150,000 sites under management, and we are partnered with the major Tier 1 service providers as part of their MPLS managed service. I do like Gartner's quote at the bottom about unmatched scalability because it's true, but we do control and provide application SLAs for our customers. So that's just a quick snapshot of Ipanema, but let's take a look next at about why there are issues today. And Jim, this is very similar to a lot of what you were portraying before. Networks have changed. They're more complex. 5 years ago, this picture didn't exist. Customers weren't looking at having unified communications. At the same time, they're installing SaaS applications with hosted data centers and not to manage the public internet. So it's a lot more complex, and if these were taken one every 3 or 4 years, it probably wouldn't be that difficult, but most enterprises are implementing one or all of them within 12 or 18 months, or at least desiring to, because the benefits are huge. And boy, there are a lot of solutions. There's a lot of things that our customers have tried. The first solution is fairly obvious. You upgrade your bandwidth. That can work well in some cases, but it doesn't do a lot for a real-time application running on a network with a lot of other things such as content delivery and, of course, the complex environment we just talked about. And then there's WAN optimization, which we do. Certainly compression and caching is great, but compression and caching can't solve the complexity of a real-time network. And what we find very interesting is that although there are challenges, and you've talked about a lot of them, Jim, and there's best practices, which we absolutely agree with, even though all those things are true, what we found in the surveys that we've done, and we've done surveys both in 2012 and 2013 with one of our partners, almost 80% of enterprises still have performance problems and still have concerns. And that's even when most of them say they're using best practices. Now, you might challenge that they're using all the best practices, but they believe they are, and they still have performance problems. So, however, there is a solution, and that's what we provide. And the way we look at it is, what if our customers could have an integrated system that, one, provides visibility, because if you can't see what's going on and don't know the resources the applications are taking, you can't really affect change. And the second thing is you need to be able to control and manage the applications, and you need to be able to do it dynamically. Putting static QoS parameters into the network, they need to constantly be changed, and they can't keep up with the dynamic nature of today's applications. And yes, you really need to provide application SLAs where you can guarantee your users that they're going to get the performance that they need. And certainly unified communications needs to be treated as just another application. It doesn't need to be different. It doesn't have to be on a separate network. And you need to be able to treat your UC apps, voice and video, as if they're critical. And you mentioned that earlier, Jim, that most enterprises believe UC is critical. And we agree, and they need to be UC needs to be managed in the same way. And you need to be able to do it over any type of network. That's what dynamic WAN selection is. The ability to manage the performance of your applications over the internet, over an MPLS network, manage it over Metro Ethernet, DSL, it really doesn't matter. Manage it over a hybrid network. And we do all those four things, and it's in a single integrated system, but in that system we also provide for classic WAN optimization, compression, caching where necessary, managing CIFS, for example, and that's all done in the single system, And we also provide a feature that we call network right-sizing, which allows our customers to right-size the bandwidth they're going to need, not only for what their service providers are providing today, but also for their future needs. So you can take a look at how you're going to grow and actually project your growth so that you can manage it cost effectively. Hopefully that's given everybody a really good snapshot. We feel very comfortable with what we do because we know we can guarantee performance, and we want to make sure our customers and our potential customers, some of whom I'm sure are listening today, feel the same way. But that means we need to be able to answer questions. So I'll bet that there are some questions out there that the audience has for us.
David, yes, thank you so much. There sure are. The first question here, I'll address to you, and it reads, do you think complexity is impacting large accounts only, or do you see more SMBs impacted too?
Jim, you can answer that too, but I'll say that the problem is probably more acute, or the issues are more acute with large enterprises. Large enterprises today are the first ones to try and implement a lot of video and VoIP at the same time for UC, and certainly to use the complexity of 4 or 5 different ways to access networks. But we also see the performance problems with applications are also in the mid-market and in SMBs because they also have been implementing maybe not as complex a network, but they seem to look at things as fairly simple, and when you add any type of UC on top of what was a very simple network, it does cause complexity, and they have concerns.
Yeah, just a quick point to add to Dave. What we tend to see is this kind of interesting U-curve where, especially when you talk about new technologies and the challenges, like Dave said, the big accounts are the ones that are most likely to have already jumped in and done some of these technologies, and they're definitely dealing with the complexities. But on their benefit, they tend to have the staff and the capabilities and just the money to kind of really jump in and handle these issues, and they want the benefits of new technologies. Also, interestingly, small companies, because they're often startups and relatively agile, they often jump to new technologies, especially cloud, VoIP, UC, mobile, because they don't have any legacy, big data center that they built. The interesting thing is the mid-tier tends to be the most challenged because they went in and built, data centers. They have a lot of traditional IT infrastructure, but they don't have the same sort of resources as a large. So they often are heavily challenged by new technologies and the complexities because they kind of in a sort of worst of both worlds kind of situation.
Great, thank you both. Caesar wrote and requested, David, specifically based on your experience, why do you consider static traditional WAN optimization, load balancers, or bandwidth increase not being enough today?
Well, static only allows you to set something for a point in time. If you've got static QoS, for example, on the network, you're pinning up some bandwidth based on your assumption that that's all I'm going to need to do. But the nature of applications today and the complexity of all the real-time apps and video is such that it's dynamic. And the amount of bandwidth that's being used, the amount of resources that are being used on the network are changing every minute. And you can't solve problems by getting a report that says, well, on Friday at 3 p.m. there was a problem, and now you want to go and change it, and by the time you change it, the problem is moved. And also, we need to remember that takes a lot of resource. Going out to a very large network, as some of our customers have, and continuing to go and change parameters on routers and ask their service providers to change class of service parameters, which are also static, that takes a lot of time and resource, and it affects the application performance. And the most critical thing is it affects the performance of the apps, which affects the business. What we provide is a dynamic way to do that, to manage the application performance at all times, every second, for every user.
Thank you, David. Perfect segue into this. And speaking about application performance, what is the link between application performance and end users' productivity?
I'm going to ask Jim to also comment, but if the applications aren't performing, the users aren't productive. And one of the statistics that we have found is that about 70 to 80% of businesses have found that not only do they lose productivity, but they're losing profits and they're losing revenue when the users aren't able to perform. And there's a dramatic effect on the business when that happens. I don't know, Jim, if you've seen the same thing.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when you break it down, I mean, it is all, it's all about the end user. I mean, if, like we said, having a great network and poor applications isn't any good, and having great applications with bad user experience is also not any good either. The end goal is having users taking advantage of these applications and getting productivity out of them. So, like I said, you really have to have, one of the challenges was seeing, understanding application performance from an end user perspective. You really need to have that visibility. I mean, a great thing I did, I talked to a company a year or so ago that was a lot of their business was based on their mobile applications, and they didn't know there was a problem until they started getting negative reviews on the App Store or on their Twitter or Facebook feed, which is really unacceptable. So, that's, at that point, it's a big problem. So you really need to have that kind of understanding of the end user perspective before it gets to the bad reviews on the application on the application stores and on Twitter and stuff like so. Yeah, that it's super important.
Sure, and as you mentioned, Jim, you also need to manage it on your BYOD and BYOA, because now your users aren't just sitting at a PC, even if it's a virtual desktop in an office. They're using their smartphones, and that needs to be managed in the same way, and you need to be able to manage the applications that come off of the smartphones, and that's also part of what we do.
Great, thank you so much. I think we'll have time for one last question here. And this question here reads, why is it so important to be dynamic and fully integrated instead of static and separated solutions?
You need to be dynamic, one, as I mentioned before, because static only fixes it for a point in time, and the nature of applications and the resources they take is dynamic. So that's a piece of it, but I think the second part of it relates to what we were talking about in productivity and profitability, that if I'm not maintaining the performance for the users on the application in a dynamic nature, the users aren't getting what they need, so they're not productive, and you can't ever manage satisfaction and manage performance by doing that. And the second is cost. There's a huge amount of cost, not only in lost profits and revenue, but in productivity by changing parameters. And if you're a large, like some of our customers that have hundreds of sites, just think of changing the parameters on hundreds of routers in hundreds of sites in order to try and manage the application performance. And then when you put in unified communications, for example, on top of it, and you try and manage video, which is now a critical app, there's no way you can do that statically. I don't know, Jim, if you have any more technical comments on that.
No, I totally agree. I mean, like we said, the whole idea of dynamics and automation and just, static approaches, that's yesterday. I mean, obviously there's still some use cases for that, but really, in a modern transformed IT world, you really need to be as flexible and dynamic as possible. That is not going to really fly for most of the problems you're going to encounter today.
Great. Well, thank you both of you. This is wonderful. It's been a pleasure, and it does bring us to the conclusion of the webinar. I want to let everyone know that for all the submitted questions that we didn't get to field during this webinar, rest assured a member of the panel will respond to your inquiry via email. I want to take this time to thank Jim Raposa and David White for sharing their research, insights, experiences, and recommendations. I'd also like to thank our audience for their interest and participation, and of course our webinar sponsor, Ipanema Technologies, for making this webinar possible. I hope you all found it beneficial, and we wish you the best wherever you may be. Thank you.